What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Mortal Kombat II, the sequel to the film from 2021, and we have director Simon McQuoid, if that's how you say his name, back in the director's chair, and we also have a screenplay by Jeremy Slater. But the movie stars AMR himself, Carl Urban as Johnny Cage, as well as Adeline Rudolph as Katana, as well as a lot of familiar faces from the first movie, as well as a few newcomers as well, which I'll get to in short order. And the reason I'm not mentioning their names right now is because these sunglasses are making it way too hard to read what's on my screen. Now I can see everything on IMDb and Wikipedia and use those as a reference. But obviously, the most important thing about this movie is that it's based on the popular video game series, which started, I think, right before my sophomore year in high school.
Johnny Cage wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
And to put it mildly, my friends and I were the perfect target audience for Mortal Kombat back in the day. We were a bunch of violent little savages, and we'd already been honing our skills playing Street Fighter II for quite some time, so we were ready for this new format where it was kind of photorealistic, or at least photorealistic by early 90s standards, but we'd never seen a game quite like it. And I thought Mortal Kombat 2 kicked ass and Mortal Kombat 3 kicked ass, and basically I remained an avid fan of the whole Mortal Kombat phenomenon right up through the release of the first movie in the fall of '95. Then it pretty much dried up and never returned. And I've tried a few of the other games over the years, but I would not call myself an avid, ongoing Mortal Kombat fan. However, I know enough about Mortal Kombat to recognize the majority of the characters in this movie, as well as their finishing moves. And if I were going to recommend that anybody go see this movie, it would be if you are a Mortal Kombat fan from any era, you've loved the games in one iteration or another, and you love the finishing moves, and you love all the violence, and you love the spectacle and the carnage and that sort of thing, you will have a good time watching this movie, provided you're watching it in the company of other video game fanatics. Because my theater was packed by people who are applauding loudly at the smallest Easter eggs, which begs the question, should video game adaptations as movies aspire to be more than just recognizable Easter eggs from the games? As much as I enjoy the Easter eggs and the little details and seeing certain finishing moves by the characters that I like, if these movies are going to have long shelf lives, if they're going to be regarded as good movies, and if they're going to continue to sustain these franchises for many more decades to come, at some point, some of these movies actually need to be like a movie that somebody can enjoy even if they have no knowledge of the games whatsoever. And I think Mortal Kombat 2's failure is that it probably does not succeed as a fantasy, kind of dark horror action movie in its own right. It really only succeeds in terms of fan service and basically giving fans of Johnny Cage an excuse to applaud when he drops into a split and bagoo! Punches a dude right in the balls, which you could see coming. They were building up, and you could see him doing these all the flippy, spinny shit. He lands in the split, and I, in unison with the movie, did the punch, and it's it's a classic Johnny Cage move. And one of these days, somebody actually needs to unleash Raiden in some of these fucking action scenes. I feel like the movie's one of the big mistakes of how they use Raiden is that he's always like this godlike, entity or cosmic being, kind of telling people what to do and what their fate and true purpose is and that sort of thing. But back in the early 90s, Raiden was a playable character. He was right there in the mix with Liu Kang and Kano and Sonya and all the other characters, and I fucking loved playing Raiden because he reminded me of the movie Big Trouble in Little China, which I saw 1,000 times as a kid. And as soon as the game came out, I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest motherfucker alive. Let me play Raiden. But I also love Liu Kang. I mean, I love a lot of the characters back in the original Mortal Kombat. But if I'm being honest, my all-time favorite look for any of the characters came in Mortal Kombat 2 with Kung Lao. And that's another ingredient in this movie that they really nailed. Kung Lao looks cool as shit. Maybe his part's a little thin. Maybe the actor playing him is a little wooden. But they at least nailed the poses and the hat.
Finisher.
Everything that's basically these games, they don't have a lot of story. I mean, you can read the little backgrounds about the characters if you want. Most people, all they care about is, does the character look cool? Do they sound cool? Do they kick ass? Do I enjoy playing them? And that's pretty much all you need to get invested in a character. So if you're a fan of Kung Lao, you'll like this movie. And then if you're a fan of Liu Kang, you'll probably like this movie. But like my dad, who loves action movies and loves martial arts movies and has been watching martial arts movies for like 50, 60 years, I doubt I'm going to tell him, oh, you got to go see Mortal Kombat 2, because he'll probably first ask, well, what is Mortal Kombat? Because in 1993, he was not playing a lot of video games. But if I had to boil down my overall impression to just one sentence, I'm going to tell you precisely what I told a member of the cleaning crew as they were heading into the theater and I was heading out, because this one guy stopped me and said, was the movie any good? And I thought for a second, I was like, all right, I don't have time to give like a lengthy preamble and explanation and conclusion and blah, blah, blah. I just said, look, if you're a fan of the games, the movie's good fun. And I think that's the best way to put it. If you're a fan of the games, the movie's good fun. As far as crossover appeal is concerned, I don't know. There are a lot of other martial arts movies out there that are like 1,000 times better, where the choreography is better, the stunts are better, the performers are better. In this movie, what is really lacking is like the actual Mortal Kombat. Like, it's got some great, funny, R-rated one-liners and some humor, and it's got a little bit of attitude and a little swagger. But what is really missing is fucking phenomenal fight scenes. And I'm not saying that the first Mortal Kombat in 1995 had phenomenal fight scenes either. Like, this is going to sound bizarre, but like Mortal Kombat 1995, I saw it 3 times in the theater, unironically, no tongue-in-cheek, no like, kind of like smirking and kind of laughing at it. I went there invested, a true believer. But apart from that killer opening, when you see like the New Line logo and you hear the theme song, Mortal Kombat, before the movie even starts, and then you get to see all the flames rising through the symbol, that opening like 20 or 30 seconds was so fucking good at that time, age 19, I kind of turned a blind eye to all the other movies' flaws throughout the entire movie. Like the scene with Reptile in the original had a good song, but I remember at the time thinking that it was really frustrating that none of the heroes got to use their powers until like the very end. Like Liu Kang at the very end of the movie shoots like a little half-hearted fireball. It's like, that's it. Like Liu Kang, at a minimum, he should have done like one of his big moves, or best of all, his finishing move. Back in the day, Liu Kang's finishing move in the original Mortal Kombat had the greatest finishing move of all, where he would do this like cartwheel and kind of kick you and hit you like 1,000 times before a massive uppercut, and depending upon which zone you were playing in, you fall through the floor and get embedded on spikes, and it was just fucking killer. But if I were to try to offer a little deeper analysis beyond, if you're a fan of Mortal Kombat, the movie's good fun, I would argue that the main thing this movie is missing is a little shock value that might cause a moral panic. And the moral panic surrounding Mortal Kombat did not last long, but there was a moral panic. In the early 90s, there were moral panics popping up left and right. There were moral panics about lyrics and rap music. There were moral panics about violence in video games. There were, you throw a dart, find a moral panic at that time. Everybody thinks the 90s were so rowdy and crazy, and they were, but there were just as many people kind of pushing back against that. And not a day would go by throughout like 1993, 4, and 5 where somebody wouldn't write an article in the New York Times like, my child is addicted to Mortal Kombat and I don't know what to do. Oh, and I remember reading some article where like, even when I take the game away and send them outside, they keep playing Mortal Kombat, like imitating their favorite characters. I'm like, good, they're getting some exercise. They're practicing their kicks and their balance and that sort of thing. But the moral panic surrounding Mortal Kombat was totally fucking ridiculous back in the day. I mean, it seems so quaint and old-fashioned in 2026, where we have like, it seems like a major political crisis or global crisis or cultural crisis like every other fucking hour. But in the early 90s, the moral panic surrounding Mortal Kombat was real. And what this movie's lacking is a little balls-to-the-wall rebelliousness that might inspire a similar pushback in 2026. I feel like if you're not making Mortal Kombat in a way where at least somebody's clutching their pearls and, oh, you can't do that, like shame on you, and wagging their finger, then you're kind of doing it wrong. There needs to be a little bit of like that fuck you swagger. And the best parts of this movie are those scenes that kind of flirt with it. Like, Johnny Cage throughout all the trailers and all the advertising, putting on his shades, flipping the bird, pushing his shades. All this stuff is fantastic. And that the movie needed a hell of a lot more of that, because the gore in the movie, it's all digital gore. It's not very shocking. And I've yet to see a movie with a lot of digital gore where I was like, wanting to puke my guts out. But I've seen a lot of movies with practical effects that are gore, where you can feel, everything coming back up. But if I see, somebody using like a buzzsaw to saw somebody from like their taint up to their skull and they fall apart, but it's just like some crummy digital effects, I'm like, all right, yeah, it's fine. Some digital effects. Let's move on to the next fight scene. They don't really stick with you. But if you see some raw practical effects by like a real special effects master, like someone like Rob Bottin, back in the early 1980s, you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to recover from what I just saw. That's giving me fresh emotional scar tissue. So yeah, a little shock value would have gone a long way. This movie does feel packaged and corporate approved. It's a product. And to be fair, even the movie in 1995 had already lost all that edge. So it's not a new phenomenon seeing Mortal Kombat failing to excite a little controversy. But I wouldn't have minded a little controversy if they could have found a way to insert it into the story, because the screenplay by Jeremy Slater, oh my lord, it's a little bland, a little generic. Which should come as a surprise to nobody, because here are some of his past writing credits. He worked on the Josh Trank Fantastic Four from 2015, not anybody's favorite superhero movie. He worked on the Moon Knight TV miniseries, once again, nobody's favorite Marvel show. He worked on Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, a movie that's so... I'm about to use the R word. A movie that's so moronic and idiotic that I've kind of scraped my tongue off and washed the whole movie out of my mouth. And he wrote a few episodes of The Umbrella Academy, and I was there at the beginning of that show, but then I fell off. But yeah, to put it mildly, no one's going to call attention to him as the next great Robert Towne of the movie industry. And director Simon McQuoid, and once again, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, McQuoid, his only previous credit was the previous Mortal Kombat movie. And I think Mortal Kombat II is a better movie than Mortal Kombat 1. I mean, Mortal Kombat 1, I can barely remember even seeing it, apart from the scenes that are used as flashbacks in this new movie. It's oh yeah, thank you for the reminder about the old rivalry between Sub-Zero and Scorpion and so on and so forth, because that was a huge part of the early games, the ongoing rivalry between a lot of people who had very similar looking outfits, whether it was Scorpion or Sub-Zero or Reptile or Smoke or any of those guys that had those badass outfits. They're all cool as shit, and I love watching them fight. But this movie does spoon feed a little character development, a little backdrop for those people who might have missed the first movie back in 2021. But I think there's a chance that Simon McQuoid might evolve into a very regular, steady, kind of layman director for the studios, handling big franchises, and who knows, maybe he'll stick with the Mortal Kombat franchise for a long time. I suspect the box office on the opening weekend for this movie is going to be pretty massive. It's going to be very front-loaded with the fanatics. The big question is, will they keep going back for second, third, fourth helpings? Because I don't predict that this movie is going to have a lot of crossover appeal with the so-called normies out there, where they're going to be all right, we're just going to let y'all have your fun, and you can tell us about it later on. But Simon McQuoid, what he really needs to work on is finding a few athletes or stunt people and choreographers that can really deliver some extremely dynamic, badass action scenes where you really can feel the bone on bone. When somebody blocks a punch or is blocking whatever, you should feel that crunch. In this movie, there are way too many scenes that not only have kind of meaningless flippy shit and dance moves. There's a big problem with the physics where somebody will hit somebody in the stomach and the person will kind of go flying off, spinning, and it just looks stupid and it looks ridiculous, and it doesn't even resemble the in-game physics that you would see in one of the Mortal Kombat games. If you're going to do something that's not realistic, at least try to be true to the flavor and tone of the games, which are a little bit more grim and merciless. Even when they started introducing the friendship moves and the babalities and all that stuff, which are fucking hilarious back in the day. I love learning all those, but there was a badassery to the original three games that this new movie's kind of lacking, and they could have easily made up for that if the fight scenes had just been a little bit more hardcore, a little bit more bone-breaking. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a very short list of all the best choreographers in the world and all the best directors of action, but if I had been in Simon's shoes directing this movie, the first two phone calls I would have made would have been to Gareth Evans and to Timo Tjahjanto. I always kind of hesitate on his name, but Timo Tjahjanto, he made The Night Comes for Us, one of the best action movies of the last 10 years, and the choreography there is sick. I mean, it's fucking awesome. It's really, really satisfying. And obviously, Gareth Evans was behind The Raid and The Raid 2 and all these kick-ass action movies. And so they know where the stunt people can be found. They know where the choreographers are hanging out and practicing their moves. And I feel like if you're going to really sell us on a movie being Mortal fucking Kombat, well, then you got to deliver the fight scenes. But it must be said, I had more or less a pretty good time at the movies throughout the entire 2-hour running time of this movie. And I'd say for a 2-hour movie, it runs quickly. There are a lot of 2-hour movies out there that feel like they're 3 or 4 hours, and there are a lot of 2-hour movies that feel like 90 minutes. I had no idea this movie was had a 2-hour runtime until I sat down to record this review and looked it up. So any movie that moves along quickly, it's got something going for it, apart from obviously the appeal of the various finishing moves. But in the end, this is the Carl Urban show, and Carl Urban is by far the most enjoyable part of it, and the finishing moves are cool. But let's talk about some of the weaknesses and flaws. Now, I would say the biggest gaping flaw of this movie is the fact that they turned Katana into the central character instead of Johnny Cage, and that was not abundantly clear from the trailer, because I'm sure they're expecting pushback. But when you sit down to watch the movie, you're like, oh, wait a second, the movie starts with her. The The movie ends with her. She has all the inspirational speeches. She gets to do, without giving away any spoilers. I mean, spoilers are kind of pointless in a movie like this, but let's just say she gets a lot of big dramatic moments fighting certain bad guys and so on and so forth. And this movie's at its weakest by far when it's trying to get us invested in the relationship between Kitana and Jade. And admittedly, Kitana and Jade are iconic characters. In Mortal Kombat 2, they were so... Actually, was Jade in Mortal Kombat 2? I know Kitana was. Hang on. Mortal Kombat 2. Yep, I'm seeing here that Jade made her debut in Mortal Kombat 2. And also, speaking of which, this movie's called Mortal Kombat 2, but until the end of time, there's only one true Mortal Kombat 2. And it came out in the arcade back in, 1994 or so? But I fucking loved Mortal Kombat 2. It is really, really good. But anytime a movie or a show tries to pull a bait and switch and push the most advertised character to the side in favor of a different character, well then you better bring your A game or people are going to be pissed off. And I would say the screenplay is at its most wooden, most predictable, most generic, and least inspired in these scenes between Kitana and Jade, where it's like, oh, have y'all ever acted before? Like, you actually need to use emotion and, feeling and actually try to imbue what you're saying with a little bit of personality. Their scenes are terrible, and at the very end of the movie, when Kitana starts talking to the people of her planet, saying, Edenians do not kneel, and blah, 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 it was so painful, and I hate the word cringe, but it was cringe. It was cringe as fuck, because you have this kind of bland charisma vacuum trying to give this big inspirational speech to a bunch of faceless people whose faces we barely ever see. They're basically just a lot of people in rags in the background of the movie, but they have no personality of any kind. But the movie's expecting us to feel this big surge of emotion at the end, and I was just rolling my eyes this is fucking pathetic. So don't be shocked at all if you see a lot of people saying, oh, I went to see a movie where Johnny Cage was advertised to be the hero, to be front and center, and as it turns out, he was a supporting character in his own movie. And let me be perfectly clear, I never regarded Johnny Cage as the hero of the franchise in Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 back in the day. My favorite characters were always Raiden, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, who else did I really like? But anyway, there are a lot of cool characters to choose from. You basically have a giant cast of characters, and you can pick any of them to be the central character. But as advertised by Warner Brothers over the last few months, it's always been Johnny Cage front and center, and I would say this movie does pull a little bit of a bait and switch. But getting back to some of the other flaws, one of the main ones is that Shao Kahn, the big bad of this movie, it's not that scary and not that intimidating. He's so big and he's kind of this big lumbering, kind of cumbersome guy. You don't really believe that he can throw a punch under any circumstances. When he throws a punch, it's slow. I mean, you could be like Neo. You could be dodging under and around it 10 times over before he would get a chance to throw another punch. And I'm sorry, if you're big bad, even if he's wearing scary armor, if he just kind of waddles into frame and swings a big hammer that's very easily dodged, that's not very intimidating. You need a bad motherfucker at the end of your martial arts movie. The scariest martial artist in the entire movie needs to be the guy you fight at the end. The final boss of a martial arts movie needs to just be hell on wheels, something like Drunken Master 2. Killer Jackie Chan movie. Fucking awesome. Some of the best fight scenes you've ever seen. But when you get to the end, you're like, oh my God. This guy's insane. I don't want to get distracted talking about Drunken Master 2, but the end of your martial arts movie needs to have the best martial artist, and I didn't see really any martial arts of any kind on display. Or Kano, played by Josh Lawson. He is an absolute Hall of Fame original OG character. He's one of the starting lineup in the first game, and I remember being a little disappointed in Mortal Kombat 2, the game, that he and Sonya were imprisoned in the background on one board, but you didn't get to control them, but then you got to control them again in Mortal Kombat 3, because the Mortal Kombat 3 cast was much bigger. But Kano's cool as shit, but in the absence of that metal mask, you don't have Kano. And in this movie, he's just kind of a Cockney Brit talking shit who, if he wants to, can shoot that stupid laser, but it's Kano needs to have his look, or he's not Kano. It would be just as ridiculous to have Raiden show up and not wear the hat. Once again, these are very thin video game characters. Put them in their best, most recognizable outfits so the fans can have a good old time watching them in action. But here's the reality. If they make a Mortal Kombat 3, and this movie perfectly tees up a Mortal Kombat 3, but if they want to make a third one, my criteria for what makes a good Mortal Kombat movie is very different from what makes a good movie. When I go see a Mortal Kombat movie, I'm expecting schlock, I'm expecting trash, and as long as it has a few fun, entertaining moments or a few catchy techno songs, well then I'm sold. That's all I need from a Mortal Kombat movie. I'm expecting very little. But let's return to my philosophical question from the beginning of the video. Should a video game movie aspire to more? Because I think there's a mistaken assumption that a lot of people in Hollywood are guilty of, where they think that because you're talking about video games that the story doesn't matter or the character doesn't matter. And that's an assumption you could only have if you don't play great video games. Because great video games for me age just as well as a great book or a great movie or a great show. Like, good stuff stays good. If anything, good stuff gets better with age, because so much of contemporary kind of pop culture is always so lousy. It makes the great stuff of the past shine brighter all the time. Like, perfect example right now, I'm hopelessly, helplessly addicted to Divinity Original Sin 2, which came out almost 10 years ago, but it's from Larian Studios, the same people who made Baldur's Gate 3. And they have a new Divinity game coming out sometime soon, but Divinity Original Sin 3. But I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be prepared for part 3, I should probably try playing part 2. And it's so good and so addictive and has so much endless customization and so many fascinating quests that have been solved in so many different ways that I'm kind of powering my way through the game just so I can start over again and play it on tactician mode, because I'm having that much fun playing it. And that is a game which absolutely is not content just to be your typical isometric RPG. It's aspiring to be more. Baldur's Gate 3 aspired to be more. And I feel like if you're making a Mortal Kombat 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, a movie of these video games, even if the fans don't demand it, if you imbue it with a little something extra, well, then you might have a situation where people are willing to watch these movies 4, 5, 6 times, buy the Blu-ray, show it to their nephews or their kids or their grandkids or whatever, and that is when you get a franchise that really is ageless and evergreen and will withstand the test of time. And the reality is that Mortal Kombat 2, the movie, not Mortal Kombat 2, the game, but Mortal Kombat 2, the movie, it's a harmless diversion. It'll pass 2 hours. You'll have a good time. But as you're watching it, you'll just be thinking to yourself, you know what? I'd rather spend 2 hours playing Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat 2 or Mortal Kombat 3. And I feel like that's ultimately like the final test for a video game movie. Would you rather spend the same amount of time playing the game or reminiscing about your past experiences by enjoying a feature film? I don't think it completely passes the test, but I did have a good time with it. And like I said before, I think it's going to make plenty of money on its opening weekend. There are a lot of Mortal Kombat fans out there. If they make a third, I will gladly see it. But as far as martial arts movies go, yeah, it's lacking. They need to practice their finishing moves just a little bit more before they're ready to make a Hall of Fame classic action movie. But I think that's all I've got to say about Mortal Kombat 2. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I expect I'll get a little bit of pushback due to my negativity, but that's fair play. Have at it. We're talking about Mortal Kombat. Like back in the day when people were playing the arcade games, they would just be talking venomous shit to each other the entire time. So if you're discussing Mortal Kombat with fellow fans, of course, some shit talking is going to ensue. So I welcome all of the above, but if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, become a member. I would greatly appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.